Hello and welcome in this tutorial where we're going to create PDF invoices from an Excel file. So first of all, let's take a look at the data that we currently have. I have a data with fictitious invoice information. So on the invoice sheet, we have the invoice number, the customer name, the service that has been provided, the invoice amount, as well as the invoice date and the due date. What we're going to do is we're going to use this information. We will also add the company name, the company logo, and of course some bank account information. Again, they're non-existent, but for learning purposes it would work great. So first of all, let's get the company's logo. Since I don't have one on my desktop, I'm going to search for let's see, a very professional one. And let's see if we can find something. Oh, I think this one will be very nice. Oh, this is also very cool. But yeah, so we have our company logo. So I'm going to save it as logo. Great. We have the company's logo. So we start by importing the modules that we need for importing these two files. So we'll start with Openpyxl, which will allow us to have the workbook. So our workbook is equal to openpyxl.load workbook. Then I have my path to this folder, but note that you have to have two of the backslashes in order to cancel the other one. Otherwise, yeah, it won't lead you to the correct path. So two backslashes, and then you need the file name. So in this case, data.xls, xlsx. So, but if you don't know the extension, you have to right click on the file, click properties, and then here it is. For the other one as well, you also need the extension. So in my case, it's JPG. At this moment, we do have the Excel file. We also need the image. For that, we are going to use PIL. So from PIL, import image. If you don't have these modules, then please go ahead and install them. And then, of course, continue with the tutorial. In order to import the image, that's very easy. We do the im equals image.open, and then since we're in the same folder, we can just do image.jpg. We are not really importing the image itself. Well, actually we are, but we're not going to do that in this case. What we need this for is to find out the dimensions of the image. Once we have the PDF file as an invoice, we want to make sure that the logo is accordingly printed on the invoice, and it's not too large, it's not too small. So this is basically to get the dimension. And how do we do that? We get them, it's two-dimensional, so width and height, and that's equal to image so that was our image dot size. I'm going to save this as invoice script, and then I'm going to print width and height. Let's see if it works. So of course we have our width and our height, but if we want to resize it, we need the ratio between the two. So I'm going to delete the print statement, but I'm going to have a variable ratio, which would be basically the width divided by height. Now I think for this part we're good. And then to get the sheet, so the data from the sheet, we need to specify the sheet. If you remember, in my data file, I had two sheets. One had employees information, and one had invoice data. So this is the one that I need. So I need to specify to get the data coming from the invoice sheet. How do I do that? Well, the sheet is equal to workbook.get sheet by name, and then the name is invoices. At this moment we have the sheet uploaded. If you want to make sure that that's correct, we can just print some number, and again the way it works is it takes the cell based on the row and column. So if we want to get, for example, let's say this one, that would be row 7 and then column 5. So row equals 7, column equals 5, and what we do is we already have it as sheet, so we would like to print the sheet which has so the sheet cell that has these parameters dot value. This is just for testing purpose to make sure that we get the correct value, so it should be 9583, and that's good. This warning you can ignore, so it's not an error, it's a warning, so you can ignore it in this case. So that's good. We know how to import the values from the Excel file. Let's continue with defining the create invoice function, and let's start with reading these values from the Excel file. So we would want to have we would like to have the company's name, but that's not coming out of basically the Excel file, so I'm going to do that at the beginning. So company name is the best company in the world. We would like to have now every invoice we want to have the customer, and the customer is, so from the sheet cell we would like to get the row. Now the row, well, we will want to iterate through every row. So if we want to create one invoice, then this is fine, but if we want to iterate through every row, we have to specify, so for every row in range. Now the range in this case would be starting from row 2 up until row 21. So that's in Python language, that's up until 22, because it does not take the last value into account. So we would like to get for every customer, the row is equal to I, because we iterate through the rows, and the column, well, the column in this case is 3, and again dot value. So this with this part we get, for every row we get the customer. What else do we need? Well, from this sheet we do need the invoice number, so invoice number, then that would be first column. We would also need to get the invoice date, or yeah, that would be good. So invoice date is column H, so that's column 8. I would want to have the invoice due date, that's column 9. Then we would like to have so the service provided, I would call that a description. So the description is the 4th column. We would like to have the amount, I would call it excluding VAT. I'd like to have the VAT and the total amount. So let's get these values. So the amount excluding VAT would be column 5, the VAT would be column 6, and the total amount would be the sum of both, but it would be column 7. So what this part of the code does, it goes through every single row and it gets these values. So far we have only set a script to read the values that we need from the Excel file. So the Excel file itself, I would say that we no longer need. We can just close it. We already have all the information, so let's continue with the rest. We need to create, so maybe it's good, I always advise to have some comments. So this would be reading values from Excel file. So later on, if you want to change something, if you have a different row, then it's very good to know which part of the code does which part. So the next part, creating the PDF file. Now in the previous tutorial that was related to creation of payslips, we already saw that we need to import few other modules, few other libraries in order to make that look good. So I'm going to put the same code here because we're going to use it. So first was from reportlab.pdfjan import canvas. This part creates a completely blank basically PDF file, and that's actually the one that we are going to work on. We need to import from reportlab.pdf base. We need a PDF matrix. Also from reportlab.pdf matrix we would like to have string width. This part we're going to use when we want to center specific text on our PDF file. And then last we would like to have so from reportlab.pdf base.tt fonts import tt font. And the last part, what it does is it makes the code, the font compatible with our code. How do we do that? We have to convert, so PDF matrix dot register font tt font. We're going to use Arial, so we have to convert it to Arial.ttf. Again, this is just to have the right extension, to have the right font that we can use in this case. So here we import Excel file. Here we basically specify logo size, and if this code is not yet finished, then we have invoice related information, which we are going to still add to it, and of course in this part we're going to create the PDF file. So let's continue. First we need to create a C would be our canvas, and it would be canvas.canvas, and we have to specify how we would like to name the invoice. So the first part is we create the file, but we need to choose the invoice name. So I think that it's a very good to have a unique name, so in case we have multiple invoice for the same customer, we can't really use the customer only, so it would be good to have the customer, but also let's start with the invoice number, so string of invoice number, because it is an integer, and then plus an underscore plus customer. Then we want to have the .pdf. If we only do this part and save our canvas, we should have 20 files, 20 PDF files that are named accordingly. That would be completely empty, but let's see if this works. If we get some errors, PDF matrix. Yeah, it should be PDF base.pdf matrix. Yes, so this part we got no errors, so that's good. So we need to just use the create invoice function. So this should create our files for us, and here we go. So we have the names, we have the invoice number. That looks good. Since we're sure regarding this part, there is no need for the following tests to print all, so I'm just going to set basically to iterate to only one row and make sure that we have one invoice correct, and then we're sure that it would work for all the others as well. What do we do next? Let's start with setting the page. So setting the canvas, the page size, and this is something that we would like to be easy to modify. So I'm going to have a page size separate section, which would be page height and page width. It all depends on the type of file that you want to print, the type of paper. So for me, for the printer that I have, it would be, the width would be 2156 and the height would be 3050. So this is the pixels. And now I can set the page size to be accordingly. So set page size, that's how we specify the page size, and I'm going to have the page width, page height. Next, let's draw the image, or in this case draw the logo. We would say draw because it's basically drawing the logo. And how do we do that? We have another basically option to use. It's a draw inline image. So draw inline image. Here we need to have to specify the path to our folder and to the image. So again, 2 backslashes, logo.jpg. We already have the link to our image, but we also need 4 other parameters. First is where in the files we would like the image to start, so the x, y coordinates, and also how large we would like the image to be. So let's specify that part first. So this would be the starting point x and the starting point y, and we would like to have image. So the first part would be to have image width, and then because that's the x axis, and then we have the image width. Up here we already specified, we already know the ratio, so we can specify the image, at least one of them, so either the width or the height. I'm going to specify the width. I'm going to say that it would be 400, and then the image height would be the image width divided by the ratio. In this case, we are sure that the image remains in the same quality as before. Make sure not to have a larger image width than the original one, otherwise it would be too blurry. So here we have the image height and width, and we would need to still specify the starting and point the x and y coordinates. So one thing that we know is we already know how much space basically we have on the paper. We know how many pixels we have. We also know how large the photo would be. If we specify the starting point x, which is the width, to be the page width minus the image width, oh, this one would be image height, and the y would be page height minus the image height. And if you print this, we would have it on the top, it would be in the top right corner, I believe, the image width. Where do I have that? Image width. Of course. Let's make sure that we call the function every time we run the script. So the logo is on the top right. Now this is not ideal. We would like to have some space on the top on the right side. So let's put a margin on both sides. We can also increase the image size, but let's leave that for now. So we would have a page information, maybe we would say, and I would like to have a margin of 100. Now instead of only having this part, we would also basically have our x coordinate minus the margin, and then this would basically move the photo more to the left, and here if we subtract the margin, it would move it to more closer to the bottom. So if we print this and we reopen the file, we have our so-called logo a bit better position than before. Of course, this is very easy to modify, and that's the good part of Reportlab. You can make as many changes as you want. So far we have drawn the company logo. We still need a lot of information, and let's write what we need. So we would like to have the company name, we would like to have the customer, we would like to have invoice number, invoice date, due date, description of what has been performed. I would say then the next could be the amount, so amount excluding VAT, total amount, and then at the end we would like to have some information regarding the payment terms, the bank account, and then maybe some contact information. And I think if we do this, then we should have an invoice, at least PDF file, that contain everything that we would need. So let's start with the company name. This is something that we are going to use. Probably it would be the same company name. If it's a different one, then I guess we should have it here and as part of our Excel file, but in this case we have one, so the company name has been specified here. What we do is we actually set the font, and the font in this case would be probably a bit larger, but before that let's specify that this document is actually an invoice. So let's print that first. So first we're going to set font Arial size 80. The text that we want to print is invoice. I'm going to use all caps in this case, and we want this to be centered. Now we already saw in the previous one how do we get it centered, so we need to find out how long the text is, how many pixels it takes. So how do we do that? Text width is string width, and this is something that we've imported. The text, so the string width of the text if the font is Arial and if the size is 80. Then we would like to have to draw the string, and so how do we actually make sure that it's centered? In this part we have the text width, and let's say that just for simple purposes it's so text width is 500. Let's say that that is the outcome of this line of code. We know that the page width is 2100, so let's say it is 2000. So we know that if we subtract these two, the empty space that we would have is 1500. We would like to have equal empty space on both sides, so empty space before the text should be 750. So in this case we know that this is where we should start. So if we start by 750, we would have 750 plus the text and then plus another 750, which would match to our page width. This is something that could vary. What if we change the text to something else? In this case the text width would increase or decrease, and we don't want to have to make this calculation manually. So what we can do is we can specify the text width, so the x coordinate, by basically getting the difference first between the page width and the text width, and then divide it by 2. The page height, so the y coordinate, we know that we want it to be a bit below the photo, the logo, so we could do a page height minus the image height, and then we can use the margin that we had up. And what we would like to print, the text. If we print this, draw string, we should get at least the invoice a bit below. This is not really below the photo, but it actually starts below, but the font is larger, so it goes up. But it looks okay, so I'll stick with that. If you want to increase it, you can use margin times 2, you can margin times 5, so you can put it even more further below. If we want to actually use coordinate and then decrease it as we go below, then it's good to have specified it as x and y. So we could say that the x, so we want to have x starting at, we could say 2 times the margin. So from left to right, when we iterate through the company name, the customer, the invoice number, and all these, we would like to have the same starting point. And for the y, so for the y coordinate, I think that we can still use this code here, so image height, but instead of just having the normal margin, we could have margin times 4. So let's continue with the company name. We would like to have, so the company name, first we would like to have the font lower. We would like to have the same font, but maybe 45 would be nice. And this is actually not related to the company name, so I could put this below, because we're going to use the same font for all the other lines that we're going to print or actually draw on the PDF file. Company name, so drawstring. Now we have the X and Y, and we have to specify that it has been issued by, and then company name, so plus company name. We're going to decrease the Y coordinate by the margin, so we continue with the next line of code. So c.drawstring xy, now it would be issued to, and then the customer. Let's see how this looks like before we continue with the rest, and let's see what could go wrong in this case. So if you see, we do have the code that we want on the invoice, but if we continue, actually there will be the description at some point would be too long and it would not look very good. So what we could do is we could have a different starting point for this part of the code and a separate one for the description that remains constant regardless of the data that we have in our Excel file. So we do have an X starting point, but we could have an X2, which would be the starting point of the data that we get from the Excel file, and we could have that as X plus 500. So 500 pixels more to the right. And then, so this would be the first part, and then we would draw string again, but here we'd have the X2 as X coordinate, and then the company name. So I think it would be a bit better if we continue like this. So drawstring X2 Y, and then the customer. Then once we're done with printing what we want to have on that row, we decrease it by the margin again. The next, well, we can actually copy paste this code, and we can just change few words. So the invoice number, and then here we would like to have invoice number. Now note that if it's integer, you have to convert it to string. So string of invoice number. I think that's how I had invoice underscore number. We could have invoice date. Again, depending on the format that you have, you might want to have basically convert it to string. Otherwise, you can convert all to string and have issue invoice date. So invoice date. Date. Again, we move to the next row, and then continue with the due date. This is the good part, is that you do this part of the code once, and then you can just run the script and create as many invoices as you want. So due date. Now regarding the description, I would say that this is something that you don't want to be at the same position as all the others. So maybe it would be here I should have one more bracket. So maybe you can move a bit more with the margin, so move a bit more means you can increase the margin times 2, so you have the same lines of code and then a bit more space that would show the description, and then you continue with the rest. So the description, again, I would want to have a bit more space between the description and this code up and a bit more between this code down. How would we want to have it? All depends on how you present the service description. In this case, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to have one line. I don't need 2 lines, and I will have text that would say invoice issued for performed, and then I have the description, and then I could have plus for and let's say month underscore year, and this is something that I can have as a separate variable. So yeah, I'll leave it here. Page as month, year in my case would be August 2019. So I have the month and the year. So what it should look like is invoice issued for performed accounting services for August 2019. Then if I go to the next line, it should be invoice issued for performed tax services for, and then the month. If you have a different description, of course you have to align the code. So this should look fine. Next is to have the amount, so drawstring XY. This would be, it could be amount excluding VAT, so amount excluding VAT. Make sure that you have a space in this part of the code so it looks better. Otherwise the code, the data that we get out of the Excel would be linked to this part of the code. That would be good. So next we need to have the X to Y, and then if we actually have only the string of the amount excluding VAT, then let's print it out. Then you will notice that what we're missing is basically the currency. We don't know which currency this is for. So how do we do that? We can just add the currency up here. So we could have euros or USD and then an empty space plus the amount. Then the VAT, we can have the same code. So again, we don't need more lines, but we do need to have the margin a bit down so we don't have the same code, basically the text on same line. This would be VAT, or we could have value added tax, the string of the VAT, and one of the last things that has to do with the finance numbers would be total amount. And here it would be total amount. For this part down here, I would say that this is something that is important to have on an invoice. It is something that would be constant on all invoices, so I don't think this is something that should be part of the Excel file. But let's see in which case we would like it to be. We could have here drawstring X, Y, and then we would like to have some text, but it would be much below the amount. So we don't want this to be together with the amounts. We would maybe in some cases we would like to have a discount. So if the invoices has been paid within 10 days, 2% of discount is granted. This is what could be done in this case. So again, we move a bit below. We need to provide some information how the invoice could be paid. So if we could have a bank account number 1234 A B C D 4 5, let's say 5 6 7 8, and then E F G H. So the last would be in case to, yeah, let's make sure that we go a bit below. So drawstring X, Y, and then in case of any questions, contact info@thebestcompany.com. I hope that maybe this exists. Info@. Let's make sure that we don't send that's the bestcompany.com. Does it exist? Okay, it doesn't. Okay, very good. So we don't actually point to someone's email. So yeah. All right, moving forward, I think this part would be just saving the PDF file. I think that we're done. So we have all the information. Let's try to print for only one invoice, and then let's see if it works for all 20 files that we have. So this is how it would look like. We have an invoice, we have the invoice related information, we have the amount excluding VAT, including VAT, we have this description. If you want to have the company logo a bit larger, that's of course not a problem. We can just increase this part of the code where we specify the height, the width to, let's say, 500. And yeah, that would be pretty much it. So if you go to the folder, if we take a look at our new invoice, it's a bit larger, and all of the text adjusts accordingly as well. So this would be all regarding the conversion of Excel file to multiple PDFs for invoices. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Feel free to provide feedback and share the content. If you want, you can of course like the video, you can subscribe, and that's pretty much it. So thank you again for following it to the very end.